So they changed it. They sent this other guy instead of the usual, and they have that landscaper, right, walking with the machine. They want to get the frequency supposedly, right, but I think they already have it. I don't know. Yeah, so I close it manually because it's manually it has a hard wire, so it doesn't. I think it has a hard wire, so it shouldn't. Well, to be honest, I don't know. Maybe it's just a remote control. It could be a remote control wired to with AC power, right? But I don't know. I mean, with the transformer. Actually, that's a good question. Let's find out. Sorry.
Welcome to the deep dive. You handed us a true...
Yeah, it's hardwired. Standard, right? It could be that model is different, but the standard way they do it is hardwiring it, right? So what I do, I get out of the car and I manually close it, right, to avoid sending the radio frequency signal. But I think they must have if they have the keys of all the houses, right, with the key maker. And a key is a hardware device. Them being, Chinese, I imagine, right? They have a way to bypass that garage opener. The security of it. So anyhow, today is February. I don't know if today is February 11th, 2026. Actually, today is my sister's birthday. Should probably call her. And it is 10:38 a.m. So I'm gonna start by saying the goal of today's trip. I'm going to the federal court again. I'm gonna file a new case. So I'm saying this in case the authorities are monitoring the situation. They could take the high ground at the court, right? See, what they do to obstruct justice this time. Because Judge Hittner dismissed my case for the civil rights violation. But the good thing about my situation is that there is no shortage of crime. It's a bad thing that there's a lot of crime in this network, right? But for me, that means a lot of ammunition. So I could sue a lot of people. So I'm going to sue a different set of people today in federal court to see what judge I get, right? Maybe I get a different judge. And through this iterative process, at some point, I will go through all the judges. And then, the situation will change, right? So I'm gonna get a new judge today, new case, new judge, new defendants. Everything is new. So that's the plan, okay? And this is demo D106, 106. Of course, the question probably is, in their minds, right? Who is going to get sued? But we'll have to wait to figure that out. Anyhow, so this is the D106, okay? I have a few things, mostly technical things and some minor things, like nothing groundbreaking really. Yes, so let me start by this, right? So yesterday I was telling you about, on demo 105, I was telling you about, it's a short segment at towards the end, right? That talks about this hunch. It's a hunch, right? That they might be using the industrial equipment rental places and the industrial equipment itself as imagine like pixels, right? They can move this equipment around and they can form shapes on the landscape that they can change. And these shapes, my hunch is that these shapes encode meaning that they can from a satellite observe through computer vision, right? Like, don't think that this is a human looking at the map. All this is done through analysis, automatic analysis of satellite images, right? So the hunch is that the Chinese have this capability of analyzing the images and reading from those specific places, depending on how the machinery is arranged and the colors in the image. They can read basically messages, right? Like, no, don't think about them like text messages, but like status updates, right? Like, I don't know, there's danger, or short messages like that, or everything is normal, or I don't know, there's an important person near here, right? There's a president nearby, something like that, right? So short, important, but short messages, right? That's the idea. And this way, imagine the power of that, right? Like, the rest of the world is operating on a telecommunication network that can be monitored, especially by them, right? By the Chinese. So when everybody is sending I'm talking about the diplomatic, corps and the state machinery of different countries, right? While everybody is making phone calls and sending emails, right? They send their messages using the tractors, the caterpillars, right? So of course nobody can intercept their messages, but they can intercept the messages of everybody, right? And that's what is, leading us to this situation right now. So here's an intercept of Whiskey, January, Honduras, 2074. Now I have to say, right, to these agents that are right now listening and talking to you, for example, this guy with the gray Audi A5. Like, listen, like, the cases are already in the Supreme Court of the US. They're not docketed yet, but they already arrived. And they will be docketed. And when that happens, people will see these videos. And your car is going to appear in this video. And this will trigger an IRS audit, an immigration audit. Like, this will trigger all sorts of actions that will impact you. And everybody is going to identify that vehicle, including the FBI. It's generally not a good idea to stand next to me as I'm driving to the court. I'm just giving you a recommendation. If you don't want to follow it, that's fine. Anyhow, so they have this, special, I think, like, this is the hunch, that they have this special mechanism. Oh, by the way, I have a message for the FBI. I haven't said this before, but the informant told me this, like, I don't know, 2 months ago, right? But I haven't said anything because I've been using this as a tool, as you can see, right? I communicate with the agents and I communicate with the judges using this rear view mirror. So the informant told me months ago that the microphone is on the rear view mirror of this Tesla, right? So I'm saying this because when the FBI comes and sees this vehicle, you don't have to waste, I think that's Gloria. You don't have to waste time in, inspecting the car. Like, it's in the rear view mirror. That's where they have the microphone. So it's an easy task. Now I imagine, now that I'm telling them this, that they're going to try to get it, right? I mean, with so many people watching and the cameras, and it might be a challenge, right? Anyhow, back to the caterpillars, right? So the hunch is that they arrange these machineries. And by the way, this is not specific to the caterpillars. It could also be done with things like boats, right? Or RVs, right? Like those places that sell RVs, right? So basically the idea is large objects that are movable, right? Depending on how you arrange them, you could form images, right, on a satellite imagery, and that image could encode a meaning, as I described before, right? So you know, I still haven't had the chance to like work more on this project, but I've been thinking about this morning, right? And I made a comment because I was doing QA on the audio of yesterday, on the 105, and I made a comment, right, about the color of the tractors, and that some of them are trademarked, right? And I think there is something there, like, you know, I mean, there's more than meets the eye, so to speak, right? So as I was saying, right, some of these brands, like John Deere, I probably am not pronouncing it correctly, but you know, like those green tractors, right, that you see everywhere. That color is trademark, and I know because I have one of those colors, and they say that in the marketing material. Right? That's the tractor that they've been sabotaging for 2 years. Right? So anyhow, that color is trademark. Right? So if the color is trademark, that means that it's unique. It's not unique, but there's very few objects in the landscape that will have that tone of green, right? And that makes it identifiable with high precision because there's nothing else like it, right? It's trademark, and if it's trademark, it's because the owner of the trademark is going to protect that, right? It's going to enforce that, and if it's enforced, then there's not many like that, and if there's not many, they're easy to find. That's the principle, right? And this, what I'm describing, is a search, an information retrieval principle. This is based on, I mean, what I'm talking about is computer science, right? Things that are rare are easy to find by definition, right? So as I was thinking about this led me to think that maybe this could be a TTP, right? I'm talking about the trademarking of the colors, right? Companies that trademark their colors, maybe, right? It's not like every company that has a trademark on a color is part of the network. But I think it would narrow it down, right? Like, for example, if I was an investigator trying to see if this is a thing, I would look for companies that have either a large footprint on the terrain and have a trademark color, like Target, for example, right? That could be an example. Target, I think in fact, I think it's called Target Red, right? Like that color is trademarked. And that company has a huge footprint. Those stores are enormous, right? And they have a lot of stores. So I mean, that gives a geographical visual anchor on the planet, given the footprint of the chain and the color that is trademarked. You know? Then you can take this. What I'm trying to say, you can take this. In the case of big stores, you can take this to a higher level of aggregation, even like. How do I say this? No, I don't know. Like this I have to research a little bit more. Let's put a pin on that. But talking more about the mobile objects, right? I would look for companies that manufacture objects that are mobile, like, you know, RVs, and this might vary by country. Like there might be. I mean, I just have visibility here of Target and John Deere because I live in the US. But maybe in Slovenia, maybe there's a particular brand of something else that has a trademark color as well, right? So what I would look for would be companies that manufacture things that move, right? And that are painted on a trademark color and that have, compared to a car, right, a large footprint, like a tractor, an RV, and within those, so this truck is like spreading trash on the highway, right? This is a dangerous situation. Within those, right, I would also look at, okay, so there is another variation of this TTP, and this I have more data. I'm even a little bit more confident on this one. It's trucks, like cargo trucks, that paint their logo on the roof of the containers that go on the truck on the back. I don't know what's that. I mean, that probably has a technical name that I, excuse my ignorance, I don't know what that is called, right? But if you think of a semi truck, right, like a Target truck, right, that brings the goods to the store, that truck, some of them may have the logo painted on the roof. I don't know, like I don't know if that's the case. But if that's the case, that logo of that trademark color is a moving marker. You can put that thing anywhere in the planet and it will be visible from a satellite and recognizable, right? So for example, if you want to keep track of a president, I'm just giving a hypothetical example, right? I'm not saying that they're doing this with the Target trucks, but it's possible that with some of the trucks of some company, right? Just using Target as an example because the red is trademarked, right? But if you want to keep track of a president, where the president is, right, of another country, right, because you're tracking him like a prey, right? What you have to do is move this truck around and park it next to where the president is having lunch, right? That will tell the Chinese satellites immediately that the president is having lunch in this restaurant. He's next to this truck or close by, right? I mean, it would be an amazing way of communication. Now, I'm just gonna give you hints as an engineer of what I would, because I mean, what I do when I find these things, right? Because I find these things, when they expose me to them, right? It's not like I'm inventing this. I'm just observing and drawing conclusions from what I'm seeing, right? So when this happens to me in these situations with them, what I try to do is put myself on their shoes. That's what I always do. Like, if I was designing this thing, how would I design it, right? So I think logos that are, or symbols that are round are probably more important, like the Target logo, right? Like, again, like this is hypothetical. I'm not saying that they're doing this with Target. I haven't tested it, right? It's possible, I don't know. I mean, some of the Target stores are marked in the index, and there have been incidents in those Target stores here in Katy, right? And they're documented in the book. But I don't know if they're doing this with Target, right? But imagine that, right? So the things that are, I don't think not even round, but I would say symmetrical, right? So things that are symmetrical and painted on a trademark color are probably the highest level of importance, because it leads to the fewer number of combinations, right? So in the, when we talk about encoders, and I've talked about encoders a lot, right, through the last year and in multiple demos, starting with the demo in January of last year. So in the world of encoders, it all comes down to how many combinations you can encode with a small number of things or features, right? A good example of this is digital computers, right? With digital computers, you can encode things using ones and zeros. So you only have two states, and with those two states, through repetition of sequences, you can encode the world, right? Literally. But think about an image, right? Like a logo, like the Target logo, right? Because it's symmetrical and it only has one color, you can only encode one state, right? It's either he's here or he's not, right? That's why I posed the example of tracking a president, right? Because there's only one president, right? You're probably tracking one president at a time, right? So a logo like the Target logo would be useful if painted on the top of a truck to track something like a president, right? Something that is so unique. But it wouldn't be useful to track, I don't know, FBI officers, right? Because there's many FBI officers. It could be anybody, right? In that huge group corpus of data. So again, I would look for things that, so the symmetrical ones are probably the most important ones, but the most rare as well, right? So they're probably more tied to a brand, like in the case of Target, right? Like they're not going to use that very often. But In the case of John Deere or Caterpillar, right, those tones of yellow and green that are trademark as well, you can, arrange the machinery in endless ways, and because of that, you have endless combinations, and you can basically track endless things, right? So this would be more useful to this will be more useful to encode statuses, right? Like status updates, than to track people, right? Or track things physically in the planet. But going on the path of tracking things physically on the planet, I would also look for logos that are non-symmetrical, like triangles, right? That have triangles or that have shapes that are not symmetrical, because that gives another dimension of encoding. For example, in the example of the hypothetical target truck, right? You could track a president, right? But you can only encode the location. There's only one dimension that you can encode, like either he's here or he's not, right? You cannot encode, I don't know, let's put a ridiculous example, right? You cannot encode a state of mind of the president, right? You can't, because you only have the presence or the absence of the target symbol, right? But imagine that the logo of this hypothetical truck is not a target truck, it's a logo that is a triangle, right? So if you park the truck, pointing north, it could mean that the president is likely to accept the proposal. But if you point the triangle pointing south, it means that the president is likely to not accept the proposal, right? So you could communicate real time with China what is going to happen in this meeting, because you have agents listening in, right? And this doesn't go through a single electrical wire, and it gets to China immediately, right? As soon as that truck is parked in the proximity where this meeting is happening, right? But you see, the non-symmetrical nature of the logo give you more possibilities of encoding, because then you can encode using the GPS location, right, to put the marker. You can encode with the color, right, whether you choose a red triangle or a green triangle, or you can have different brands that have similar logos, right, with similar shapes at least, but different trademark colors. And that way you can encode one more dimension using the color, right? So now you have one dimension for location, one dimension that you have free using the color, and if it's non-symmetrical, then you have the orientation, and say, like, I don't know the precision. This I have to say, I'm ignorant on this topic, right? I don't know what is the precision of observing the orientation of an object like a truck or like a logo of that size from a satellite. Like, I don't know if the precision, I imagine, would be measured in degrees, right? With how many degrees of precision you can measure the orientation. But let's assume that you can measure only north, south, east, and west, right? So you have four possibilities. So if it's non-symmetrical, you have four more things that you can encode into an extra dimension, or you can split it into two dimensions with two possible values, things like that, right? So that's how you build encoders. So I think this might be a thing, right? Like, it's just too good to not do it. Well, and if they're not doing it, please, take this as a hint. This is something that can be done, right? And it's probably a very good idea. I mean, it's probably something that would be very useful for diplomatic missions and things like that, right? It has applications. I can see that this could have real-world applications in high-level politics, is what I'm saying, right? So I don't know. I don't know if they're doing it. I don't know yet, right? I still have to test. I have to do a lot of work on this. It would take me probably, to give an idea, right, to give you an estimate of labor. This will probably take me 2 weeks, right, to figure it out with rigor if they're doing this. But But if they're not doing it, you know, we should probably do it. I mean, if they gave me the idea by, you know, putting these things on in the way, well, you know, it's a good thing, right? I guess the US should probably do something like this, right? I mean, if they're interested in developing a secure communication channel that cannot be intercepted, right? Which, you know, me being in this situation, you know, that would be my dream, right? Like my dream, one of my dreams is to have access to internet that the Chinese cannot monitor. You know, that I know it sounds simple to probably you listening this, but to me that is a dream, right? It's something I have not had in 25 years, which is basically the entire existence of the internet, right? At this point, I mean, you know, at least when the internet, you know, took off, right? After the crash of the .com era. So anyhow, I think that is a very interesting field. But basically the technique is combining, well, and of course, right, this is also an amazing signal for detection, because, I mean, if it pans out to be the case, then a key component of this technology is the trademarking of the color, obviously, right? Because if the colors are too common, it will introduce noise, right? Imagine that you're tracking a president and somebody comes with a large truck of the exact or very similar color and parks it in an area nearby, but not exactly where you need. So this would confuse the Chinese satellite, right? They can't allow that to happen. So they have to make sure that nobody, no car manufacturer, nobody who manufactures anything that moves can have this color. But this could be a footprint for detection, because what you have to do is look for lawsuits of companies like, I don't know, I imagine, right, John Deere and Caterpillar and things like that, suing other people for the use of the color. I mean, that's probably a signal, right? I mean, if they're suing, it's because they're concerned to protect that, and, you know, then you can trace it. I mean, that leaves a trace. The attorneys have to be, I mean, they're not going to use any attorney for that. They're going to use a special attorney. The judge, right, that made that decision, what was the ruling? Was it always in favor of Caterpillar? You know, like these things, right? Like there's a lot of gold to be mined from this, if this happens to be the case, right? So I don't know. It's amazing. It's amazing to see these things. All right, I'm gonna move on from that. But you know, it's such an amazing topic that I feel like I'm gonna be doing more work on this. By the way, you know, there's a thing I've been meaning to say, right? And you know, I'm gonna use this rear view mirror that the Chinese put in here because, like, well, let me tell you this first. The reason why I haven't said anything about that I know about the rear view mirror is because I realized long time ago, when I knew, right, that this is a tremendous tool. I mean, it's a super valuable tool. I mean, if you think about it, like philosophically, right? What is this rear view mirror? It's a direct phone line to Fuerte Tuna. How many people in the world have a direct phone line to Fuerte Tuna? I must be, you know, one of a handful of people. So it's a tremendous tool for me, right? But anyhow, on the flip side of that is that I imagine that at this point, you know, the authorities of this country have to be getting this information, right? Like they must be monitoring the situation for security reasons. I mean, you know, what I said in the other demo, right? Like if they hear these things I'm saying, they have to follow me. They have no choice because they may suspect of me, right? So anyhow, I'm gonna say this, right? So one of the things that, like, and I don't know how to say it. I mean, it's a thought, right? It's just a thought, and I don't mean to overstep or anything, but I have this tendency of thinking of what could happen. I don't know why, right? But I always try to think of what could happen next if something happens, right? So I guess what I'm trying to say is this, right? Imagine for a second that in one way or another, right, I managed to get this to the press. I mean, to the newspapers and to the, right? I imagine, right, that how do I say this? Probably, I imagine, right, that the intelligence services of other countries may try to contact me, right? I mean, this is, I imagine, right? For I don't know, like, regardless of which side of the geopolitical board, you are on, if you're an intelligence agency, you must be interested in how the Chinese are doing these things, right? So I imagine that at least one or two, I don't know, right, intelligence agencies of other countries will try to get in touch with me and, I don't know, hire me, or I don't know, right? I don't know what that would look like, right? Because it hasn't happened. But this poses to me a fundamental question, right? And I don't know what the dynamics are, like, or the rules of engagement, like, if I give information or technology to another, like, I don't know, like, is this a crime, right? Like, is this who regulates this stuff? Is this regulated even? So I guess what I'm trying to say, or it's more like a proposal, I guess, right? Like, if the FBI gets this, I would suggest or propose humbly. This is a humble proposal. Like, please, establish some sort of a liaison that I can ask these questions, because I don't want to make a mistake. I don't want to. I don't know. It feels like it's information that could be used for bad, right? For wrong. And I'm conscious that I'm not prepared or equipped to make that call. Like, so I don't know. I guess if anybody's listening to this, you understand what I'm saying, right? My concern, right? Where I'm coming from. Anyhow, what is that? Yeah, so we talk about the rearview mirror. Yes. So another thing is that the informant told me, I don't know when, a few days back, right? He told me that apparently my former partner, she was concerned that I may overcome all these challenges, let's put it that way, and that I might become her enemy. That's what she said, apparently, to somebody in the Venezuelan intelligence. And well, first of all, I want to say, I probably she's not able to listen to these things, but I don't take this personally. In fact, I've asked for clemency, or like, for a lighter treatment, and to have. I said this in one of the demos before. Like, I'm asking authorities to have in mind that this child has been through a lot, and losing his mom for years is not going to help him. So, I want to preemptively, put her mind at ease if she ever listens to this. That that's not even in my mind, right? Like, I don't see her as an enemy. What else? Sorry, there's a car in there. Yes, but now that we're talking about Gloria, there's another thing that happened recently, and I'm gonna say this not because of Gloria, but because it could be traceable and it could implicate other people, okay, and other people that care for children, right? Which it's a primary focus of mine because I care about children. I mean, I see what these people do with children, and it horrifies me. So what happened is this, right? In the Valleyside Drive house, which is at this point unoccupied, right? I have furniture in there, and I have, a kitchen, but I don't spend a lot of time in that house. In that Valleyside Drive house, this network cut the gas. supply months ago, right? And this is one of those disconnection attacks that they do, right? To paint me as somebody irresponsible or crazy, right? So somebody who doesn't even have heat on their home, right? Now Texas is a warm state, like it's usually warm, but on winter, like these months, January, February, temperature can drop, right, to I don't know 5 Celsius, something like that. So you need heating, right? And if you don't gas, in my case, that heating system is made, it functions with gas, it's natural gas, and if I don't have gas, I have no heating, right? So what happened was this, right? Because I'm aware that I don't have gas in this house, and I've been seeing the child in that house when she allows me to see the child under her supervision, because that's what the void order supposedly says, right? The void order that Telfair and William Carl Adams and Terry Adams fabricated, right? So because I know that there's no heating in that house, I only see a child when the temperature is above 19 degrees Celsius or 20 degrees Celsius. So there was one instance recently in which we were there with a child, right? And then everything was fine. Like, the temperature was fine. Like, there was no issue, right? She left, everything was fine. But the next day, she sends me a message saying that the child was returned from the child care with fever, that he was sick, and that she believed that it was because the temperature in the house the previous day was too cold, right? So the informant told me that this is another legal attack. This is seeding a narrative, fabricating evidence, basically, to say that I'm endangering the child for getting him into a residence that has no heat. Right? But I know this, like I know what they're trying to do, right? But I'm mentioning this because the child was probably not really sick, and the person that returned him from the childcare has to be aware of the plan, or at least complicit, right? Like at least collaborate with them to create this pretext, to fabricate this evidence, right? I mean, the child did go to the preschool, and he was indeed returned from the preschool with a note saying that he had fever. But my former partner said that when he arrived, when she picked him up, he did not have fever anymore. So she could not verify the temperature. But according to the staff in the preschool, he had temperature, right? So I imagine that there must be somebody in the preschool that collaborated, right, to create this note with this, fake claim that the child was sick, to then fabricate all these narratives, right? So because of that, I imagine that brings some level of possible, right, liability to that person, whoever that person is. I don't know who it was because I wasn't there. They didn't call me. They only called her. And that's another interesting thing. This daycare, although I'm the one paying for it, they never call me when he gets sick or anything, right? I imagine this could mean that Morgan Hittner and William Kyle Adams gave them a copy of that temporary restraining order that judge signed, that is a void order because they never served it to me, they never called me to a hearing. But, the fact that they never called me, right? They have my number. I am the one who pays for the childcare, but they never called me. They only call her. So maybe they are in knowledge of this secret index number 7 that we have talked about multiple times before. Right? And that school is the British Press School in Cinco Ranch, in Katy. Okay. The next item I have is that the case in the Supreme Court of the US has not been docketed yet. So the first package arrived on Monday as scheduled at 10 a.m. That was the petition for the writ of mandamus, okay? And today at 10 a.m. local time arrived the second package, which was it is an emergency application for a stay of all these sham trial proceedings that they have against me here in the state courts, coordinated by who. So that arrived this morning, right? But so far there is no case number and it hasn't been docketed. Now, it's no reason to panic yet because this could be normal, right? According to online sources, it seems like it could be up to a week. So we are waiting, patiently waiting, but aware, right, and monitoring the situation. So I wanted to give you that update, right? The 2 packages arrived, but they have not been docketed yet. Now I have to check. This is something I should do probably. I have to check who signed the package, right? To see if it was Mr. Lee or Mrs. Lee again, because that would say that it wasn't that person that got into trouble. But if somebody, I mean, it's not like if somebody else signed it, it means automatically that Mrs. or Mr. Lee got into trouble. Because there could be multiple people that have the power to sign packages, right? For packages, but on the other hand, if Mr. or Mrs. Lee signs the package of today, then it disproves, it eliminates that possibility, right, from the board. So that's why I want to check. So that's that. Yes, so I wanted to tell you on demo, I think 103, I think it was, right, when I went to the in that area near Memorial Park where the DEA is. There was a house that has a lion statue, right? I want to tell you that lion statue, I had seen it in 2 other properties in Katy. One is the house of Miller, who is the intellectual property attorney that is marked in the index, that lives in Lake Point Estates, that is that his house is basically next, like in front of Robert Mueller's house. Robert Mueller being the former director of the FBI. Right? He has not 1, not 2, but 3 statues like that. Exactly. I mean, these statues. This is what I want to tell you. These statues are highly standardized. I mean, it's the same statue, right? And I can tell you that because I've driven in front of these statues multiple times. I mean, at Lake Point Estates, right? Probably dozens of times. And I drove next to this one 2 days ago, and it's exactly, it's probably the same mold, the same manufacturer, right? It seems standardized. And the other time I saw it, it was on that area that is behind the X09 airport. There's a set of houses over there that are also secluded next to a park, not next to a very large vacant land. And there is a notable top dog in that area that has 2 statues like that also on the front of the house. So I mean, the coincidence lies on that the anomaly, right? That the 3 houses are marked in this database that Diosdado Cabello gave me, and that the 3 houses have these exact same statues, right? And the 3 of them are marked with very high prominence scores in the database, right? So the theory is that these statues, this particular lion statue, is a marker of super high prominence and importance within the network. That's the theory. Yeah, so I think those are the things that I had for this demo 106. I'll probably record a bit of whatever happens after I file this new lawsuit, and who's going to be the judge, who's going to be the winner. It's important to know the winner. So I'll give you that update after the filing. Okay, thank you so much. Not here. No. I think it's this one. Oh, it's not Walker, it's this one. They close the parking lot. Oh my god. So it's closed. I can't park. I mean, they closed it. It's amazing. No, turn on right. We have to wait. Oh, this is a total blockade. Are you getting in? Are you getting in there?
No, I'm trying to
Okay.
exit. Yeah, sorry.
No problem. Could you back up a second so I can get in? So you see, kids, determination. Never give up. No matter how many cars they put in, you come through. You see? All right. All right, so we're on the second part of demo 106. Sorry, I'm just catching my breath because I was running back and forth the course. So I just filed the document that I came to file. On the first part of the demo, I said that I was going to create a new lawsuit. Of course, that isn't true. I just can't tell them that, you know, what I'm going to do, right? Because then, that gives them advantage. But at the same time, I have to say to authorities that I'm going to the federal court so they can take the high ground and can observe if somebody like a clerk obstructs justice, right? But the real goal was to file a different document. I filed a document, it's just not a new lawsuit. What I filed, and this came from the legal vaccine pipeline. My goal was to file it yesterday, but it was too late. I mean, I got stuck in traffic and all that, and I couldn't do it. But I think this legal pipeline, so here's another vehicle, Whiskey Delta Delta 4909. It's a fire-safe fire alarm systems. Yeah, that sounds about right. So this pipeline, it seems to be developing personality. I don't know. When I ran it, I don't know when it was. So probably the previous day, right? So yesterday was Tuesday, was Monday, right? When I was working on creating the emergency application. The pipeline calculated that the best legal strategy was to create what it called, the pipeline gave it this name, a rope. So basically this document that I filed is a rope that I respectfully handed to Judge Hittner. It's an instrument that basically it's a motion to reinstate the case, okay? Based on several things like the jurisdiction and all the things that were violated, right, by the order and the refusal of the clerk to issue the summonses in the first place, all that, right? But that's the substance of the document, right? But the interesting part of the document is that it attaches the emergency application that was just filed with the Supreme Court 2 hours ago. It arrived to the Supreme Court 2 hours ago, right? I sent it yesterday afternoon, but it arrived 2 hours ago. And in this document, that emergency application, which is addressed to the Chief Justice that manages the Fifth Circuit, right? That is basically the supervisory person above all these courts in Texas, right? All these federal courts in Texas. And it's a justice that sits in the Supreme Court. So this motion to reinstate the case beyond the substantive matters, and that it says explicitly that Judge Hittner is named as a defendant in the complaint. He cannot be the judge, right? But on top of that, it attaches the emergency application addressed to the administrative supervisor of the Fifth Circuit, and puts the judge and the entire court on notice that this is on the Supreme Court. This is in front of the Supreme Court, right? So this poses an impossible situation. There's three choices, right? This is what the pipeline thinks. Maybe there's another thing that the pipeline did not see, right? But there's three paths that Judge Hittner could take on this one, right? Let's analyze the paths. Path number one is not ruling on the motion, which would be a failure on a ministerial duty, right? It would just confirm what I've been saying. Path number two is to accept the motion, to grant the motion, right? And reinstate the case, which is what I want. But this would be contradicting himself, right? And it would open the door for me to file the Fifth Amendment complaint, right? That he struck from the record, to refile it. And option number three is to deny the motion, which would be a direct challenge to a higher court. Like he would be actively, the argument could be made that he would be in that scenario, right? If he rules on that motion when this thing is being reviewed by his supervisor, right? The role is not really his supervisor, but you can think about that role as a supervisor, right? Of Judge Hittner himself. So he would be ruling on a motion on something that is pending review by his supervisor, right? So the argument could be made that he would be in contempt of a higher court, and he would be also violating the oath to his own office. All these was deduced by the pipeline, right? Because these judges, they take an oath, and he would be violating that oath if he does that. But more importantly, he would be directly challenging the authority of the justice in the Supreme Court that has the supervisory power over this court, which I think is Judge, his name escapes me right now, but I think it's Alito. I think it's the name. Judge Alito, right? Justice Alito. So he would be directly challenging the authority of Justice Alito. And on the other hand of this equation, Justice Alito has this on his desk. So if he sees that his supervised is challenging his own authority, he has to take action, right? I mean, this would make Judge Alito want to fire Hittner, right? I mean, supposedly, right? I imagine. But you know, like if you think about that, right? Like, so if Judge Hittner takes that path of denying the motion and striking it from the record, he would, I mean, because he can deny it, right? But he can also strike it, which would be worse, because then he would be destroying the thing that his supervisor is supposed to review, right? I mean, this would be worse. This would be obstructing his supervisor from supervising him, right? So this would amount to, I would argue, this would be judicial rebellion, would be a good name for this. This is not really a legal concept, but he would be rebelling against the authority, the figure of authority over him, right? This would be a rebellion in the judiciary system by Judge Hittner, right? And I imagine in circumstances like that, Justice Alito has to fire him, right? I mean, literally fire him, right? It's like, I don't know what are the rules that apply in this societal system of the judiciary, but at least, for example, I think if it was the military and a subordinate rebels against a superior, they could be court-martialed, you know? So I don't know. I don't know what applies here, but it seems to me like a serious situation, right? So I don't know. So that's why it's called the rope, right? Because it's a tool that could be used in different ways. Anyhow, that's what I was filing, and it's filed. So that's that. Well, I think there's a fourth option, right? But I mean, this would be equally bad, right? Like, he could make up a rule, so say something like, well, if the case is dismissed, you cannot file anything, something like that, right? Like an administrative rule to exclude the filing. But this would be obstruction of justice, because that's not true. So let's see what happens. This is like when Troy Pickett said that the third recusal motion, right? And he was going to invoke that rule, and but it was a made-up application of the rule. Like, that's not what the rule says, right? He just made it up. So, you know, they could maybe do something like that. I don't know. You know, thinking a bit more about the thing with the colors, right? And here, you know, I'm ignorant. I on this thing that I'm going to say, I have no way of doing this because I don't know the regulations, right? But I'm trying to think what other moving objects are painted on colors, right? That could be used in the same way. One thing that, you know, could be is shipping containers, right? In boats, on large vessels, right? So I would look to see if there are any particular colors. Of course, the application of that would be limited because, well, actually, no, it wouldn't be limited. It would be powerful. I was going to say that it would be limited because you could only deploy the markers on naval, I think that's what the way you say, right? Like water routes, naval routes, right? Rivers and oceans. And I was going to say that you cannot mark a president on an ocean. But it could have other applications, right? Like you could mark things like, you know, a shipment of cocaine from the Cartel of the Sun is coming through, right? Something like that. You could mark it with the containers on the other boats, right? You could signal operational statuses that way. So it could be another interesting application, but you know, it would require knowing what are the because I imagine these colors are regulated, right? Like I imagine these containers cannot be painted in any color. I think there's a meaning behind the color, right? And even there is a meaning on the color of the boat. Like what color is the ship also has a meaning. Like the oil tankers are a different color than, you know, other types of tankers. But I think the signal for detection there could be the color and also how fresh is the paint, right? Because one of the weaknesses of this system that they have for this kind of computer vision using satellite imagery is that it needs the paint to be pristine. You know, like that's why all those like basketball courts that they deploy on the backyards of the important agents that are painted orange, that's why they are super well maintained. Because if they scratch or, you know, get dirty or whatever, then the precision drops. Then the satellite image gets, you know, blurry with other colors, and then the satellite cannot distinguish the, you know, the marker. So I imagine if they're using this thing with shipping containers on the oceans, probably the markers are well painted, right? They cannot be, you know, like, I don't know if I've been on ships during my life because I used to work offshore for a short period of time, but I did it. And I've noticed that most of those containers, the paint is terrible, right? Because those containers are exposed to the elements forever, right? For decades. And they're not painted frequently, right? They could be going without repainting for years, and they could be exposed to salt, to water, to sun, to ice, cold, hot. So the paint degrades quickly and a lot. But I imagine if they are doing this with using them as markers, those containers have to be pristine, right? And that could lead to detection. And it is an interesting field because the maritime industry is heavily regulated and there's records of everything, right? Who are the owners of the ships, all that, right? The insurers, everything. So it could be an interesting one. It could be an interesting project, but I think it requires somebody that knows about maritime laws, particularly in the area of commerce, right? Of international maritime commerce. And I don't have any expertise on that. Yeah, so that thing with that filing is interesting because it will create a situation in which they'll have to, they'll have to figure it out between Judge Hittner and Justice Alito. Like they have to resolve this crisis, right, among the two of them, and somehow process my lawsuit. Because it's not a favor, really, what I'm asking. I'm asking a court to do its job. That's why the court exists. That's why the judges are paid a salary, right? I'm not asking for a favor. And I'm not asking for a ruling. I'm asking for processing the lawsuit, ministerial administrative duty. So let's see what happens. gonna play some music. I'll cut it from the video. Yeah, so I just want to record a quick note for the judges, mostly, about the presidential pardon thing that, I imagine, right, that was probably promised. I saw something that I think makes it, more clear that it's not going to happen, is that the president has had multiple cases that have gone through the Fifth Appellate Court. The same court implicated in this, and these are prominent recent cases signed by or with orders signed by these judges, right? So no sitting president in those circumstances is going to grant a pardon, obviously, because it would look like quid pro quo, So I think that makes it more obvious that that's not going to happen, right? So take that into account. That was interesting at 12:35 p.m. February 11th. So what I did, because I saw a black Suburban, right, that was getting ahead of me, I turned right to kind of introduce delay, right, into their planning, so to mess it up. And so I did that, right, and then after I turned right, then I turned left, and then I did a U-turn, right, and came back on the same way that I was going to go. But then when I exited that area, a truck stopped me. So there was a truck carrying construction materials, and it blocked the road, right? So now I imagine, right? I cannot prove it, but it sounds like now they introduced back the same a similar amount of time that I introduced into their system, so they could recover from it, right? I don't know, just an observation. The other thing I wanted to say. I was thinking about, because again, I was doing QA of the audio, right? And actually, this is the car. X as in X-ray, W Frank X618. It's a black Suburban, I think. So I was doing, that's the one that blocked me 10 minutes ago. Sorry, not that blocked me. The one that was following me ahead. But you see, he caught up with me because they introduced the truck, right? It's like a semi truck carrying materials, construction materials, building materials. So anyhow, the other thing I wanted to say is about the thing that I mentioned something about potentially creating a visual cue, right, that tells you when a device is recording, and creating legislation that obligates or mandates manufacturers to put these on devices that have the capability to record, right? And then if the device is not compliant, it's illegal, right? Like the same thing that, there's ways to do that, right? Like, for example, some states make radar detectors illegal, right? So those devices are illegal to own. If you have one, you could be arrested, right? So if you have a phone that doesn't have the capability or has it tampered with, that does not display that you're recording, when you're recording, you could get arrested, right? So that's the idea. But when I made that comment, I was talking about that lady with the red leggings that was running the other day when I was going to file something in the federal court. And then I started talking immediately after I described that situation with her. I said something about Texas being a one-party consent state. But when I was doing QA, I realized that comment is misleading, right? In that specific situation of that lady, because I was not having a conversation with her, right? First, one-party consent applies when you are in a conversation with another party, right? And at least one of the parties is aware that the conversation is being recorded. But in that situation, I was not conversing with that lady. I was driving my car, right? And she was running on the sidewalk next to the road when I was driving the car. So I could have been in a conversation on a phone with a third party, and she could have been recording it with that phone, right? So, and in that case, it is illegal, right? Like, because she's not a party of the conversation. So I guess, I don't know, like, I will have to look into this more from a legal point of view, what being a party really means, I guess is the question. Like, is it being physically present? Because, I mean, she was physically present, right? She was running on the sidewalk meters away from where the conversation was happening, but she was not a party to the conversation, right? So I don't know. I feel like my comment in that context could have been misleading because it's not really the situation, right? She wasn't a party to the conversation. Now, in the case of the bartender 2.0, it's different, right? Because he was walking the dog in my front yard and I engaged him. I talked to him, right? So in that case, I'm establishing a conversation with him and he's a party and he can record it, right? So in that case, it could be legal. But in the case of the lady, I don't think it would be, right? So my comment in that context probably was misleading, I think. So I just wanted to make that clarification. But I think that probably also means, I mean, in this because I guess those laws are old, right? Like they probably date a few years or several years. And probably the lawmakers that created those laws didn't envision this world, right? Like didn't envision this situation in which the Chinese, the Communist Party of China, has remote control over all these millions of phones deployed across the planet. They didn't foresee that, right? As a possible reality. So I guess it's a more fundamental question for lawmakers, like, what does it mean really to be a party of a conversation? And that needs to be clarified, right? What is a reasonable expectation of privacy in a public place? Like, can anybody walking by with a phone in their hands record anything you say to anybody, even if they're not part of the conversation? I don't know the answer to these questions, and so these are complex questions that also depend on the jurisdiction, right? Depend on the state, depend on the country, depend on the. So I don't know. It seems like a monumental challenge for lawmakers around the world, right, to deal with the Communist Party of China in this particular aspect. But I don't know. One step at a time, right?